Okay. Can I get a roll call, please?
Good morning. Director Ranjiv Kush,
Here.
Director Matt Sampson,
Here.
Director Judd Smith.
Here.
Director Monty Schmidt
Here.
and Chair Larry Russell.
Here. Okay, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any comments on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Russell.
Aye. Okay, public comment on items not on the agenda.
There are none.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Moved. Second.
Roll call.
Vice Chair Kush,
Aye.
Director Sampson.
Aye.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
And Chair Russell.
Aye. Okay, item 2, dam safety program overview.
Good morning, directors. Crystal Yasmin, Director of Engineering. I'm happy to present or introduce this morning our newest licensed professional engineer.
Congratulations.
This is Matt Steiner, and he will be giving you a presentation this morning on dam safety program.
You've explained to him about the liability issues that come with registration, right?
All right. Good morning, directors. My name is Matthew Steiner, freshly associate engineer in planning. And today I will be presenting on the district's dam safety program. This presentation will start with some background information on the district's dams, and then I will cover our dam safety program, go over condition assessments and routine preventative maintenance, and conclude with next steps. Dams are vital assets to our water system. They impound surface runoff for future use. They provide the ability to maintain a constant supply of water to our customers, and they create homes and food supplies for a variety of flora and fauna. The district owns and operates 7 dams. 6 of them are earthen, 1 of them is concrete. They impound just shy of 80,000 acre-feet of water. Some are among the oldest remaining structures in the county, with construction years ranging from 1872 to 1979. The table on the slide shows construction years for each of our district dams. As you can see, Lagunitas was constructed in 1872, Phoenix in 1907, and Alpine in 1917. Alpine was raised for the first time in the 20s and again in the 40s. Bontempi, constructed in 1949, Peters Dam, which creates Kent Lake, constructed in 1954 and raised in the 80s, and Seeger Dam, which creates Nicasio Reservoir, was constructed in 1961, and lastly, Suluhuli Dam in 1979. Jumping right into our dam safety program. Our dam safety program has several components, each of which will be addressed in the following slides. Monthly district inspections, annual Division of Safety of Dams or DSOD inspections, real-time monitoring, and emergency response. On a monthly basis, district employees visit each of the district's 7 dams. While at the dam, they conduct a visual inspection, looking for anything that may jeopardize the dam's integrity, like animal burrows, overgrown vegetation, large holes, or slumps. They measure the piezometers for verification of the hydrostatic forces within the dam. The map on the slide shows the 17 piezometer locations on Peters Dam. Staff also measure seepage through the dam to identify any changes from the norm. Monthly inspection is used to determine when vegetation management crews are needed. Information from this visit is documented and reviewed by engineering to look for abnormalities, which there are typically none. This data is compiled and submitted to DSOD as part of the annual report. On Phoenix Spillway, a horizontal crack was identified in 2005. Since then, monitoring equipment has been installed to track that it is stable. Every year, district staff meet with the Division of Safety of Dams representatives at each of the district dams. While on site, a visual inspection of the dam is conducted with the intention of identifying both changes and potential improvements. A discussion of the district's annual report allows for DSOD to clarify any measurements or comments from monthly investigations. Emergency valves like the inlet and outlet valves used to drain the reservoir are cycled on a staggered 3-year basis. The images on the screen are of Alpine Dam, original construction in the top and current picture on the bottom. Alpine Dam was constructed with inspection galleries, which are entered every 5 years. The picture on the left is from the recent gallery inspection done this last September. The most recent instrumentation report or annual report was submitted in June of this year. We are monitoring our reservoirs in real time through our SCADA system. While monitoring is helpful, alarms have been introduced to notify operators of abnormal situations like high or low lake level or rate of change. In addition to water surface elevation or lake level, we are virtually keeping tabs on flow rates like transfer pumping and stream releases and rainfall. Alarm set points can be toggled if the operator wants to keep a closer eye on any particular reservoir. Dam emergencies can vary in severity, from a mere flow-related notification to catastrophic failure, or nearly catastrophic in the case of Oroville in 2017, pictured on the slide. In line with the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal-OES, the district has planned for dam-related emergency response using a few approaches, including the Emergency Action Plan, which lays out the response process for dam-related emergencies, everything from signs and symptoms of a dam emergency to coordinating an emergency response. Inundation maps show the predicted emergency areas using computer modeling to be used for things like planning evacuation routes and notification lists. Response development involves coordination with many stakeholders, like the County of Marin Office of Emergency Management, to local emergency responders, to Caltrans, to the National Weather Service, and more. Routine tabletop exercises to keep emergency contacts up to date and practice of emergency notifications. Pivoting to condition assessments. Following the Oroville Dam failure, DSOD ordered the detailed evaluation of 93 dams throughout California, which DSOD believes is similar to Oroville Dam, focusing on evaluation of the concrete lining, the existing drainage system, and any potential for slab undermining and hydraulic jacking. The 3 district dams identified were Sulahuli Dam in the top call out on the map, Seeger Dam, the middle call out on the map, and Peters Dam, the bottom call out on the map. In response to the evaluation mandate, a work plan incorporating both condition assessments and site investigations and a phased approach was developed, in which DSOD approved in 2017. The district retained AECOM Technical Services to perform the Phase 1 assessment. Beginning in 2017, AECOM began Phase 1 evaluations through a desktop analysis of records data, including as-built drawings, boring logs, design features, previous inspections, and repair records. Simultaneously, a site visit was conducted to identify any visible deficiencies. Phase 1 identified specific locations for non-structural repairs, including cracks, spalls, surface defects, joint sealing, as well as weep hole clearing, all of which DSOD considered regular maintenance. These repairs were addressed in the non-structural spillway Phase 1 repair projects, which were completed in September of 2021. Phase 2 work plans, approved by DSOD in March of this year, will obtain additional field information as part of the comprehensive assessment to evaluate the current condition of our spillways. This work is expected to be completed in the fall of this year. Activities included in Phase 2 focus on evaluating subsurface structural conditions. This will be accomplished using a combination of ground penetrating radar for subsurface mapping, which is the image on the screen of somebody performing, concrete coring and probing to investigate suspected voids, and video survey of subdrain pipes to identify blockages, clogging, or deterioration. The annual assessment completed by DSOD typically results in findings. To date, DSOD has determined all dams are safe for continued use. This is consistent with the monthly data that staff collect, which shows no significant changes in monthly piezometer, seepage, or leakage readings, which are reviewed regularly to identify anomalies. There are no observed changes in structural integrity. There's no significant horizontal or vertical movement in land surveying data collected annually. Last month, the County of Marin grand jury published a report titled Dam and Reservoir Safety. Staff is still assessing the report findings and recommendations. Staff will come back to the board at an upcoming meeting with a prepared response. The underlying idea of the report identifies concerns over climate change and atmospheric rivers and effects on dams, specifically spillway capacities. The district will be hiring a dam expert to provide high-level support relating to spillway capacity analysis. Shifting gears to routine preventative maintenance. Maintaining our dams is a lot of work. To name a few tasks in support of this effort, vegetation management is done annually and as needed. We remove logs and debris, like the picture on the right. Removing log booms is a frequent winter activity during and between storms. We exercise valves. We inspect valve actuators and clear trash racks. We replace boulders and ensure the riprap is preventing erosion from wave action, which is the picture on the left. Other projects are done as needed and per the state inspections, like minor spillway repair, weir maintenance, and piezometer replacement. All maintenance work is done in coordination with DSOD. Next steps include executing Phase 2 condition assessment work plan and following up with DSOD on the results. Continue the review and review process for updating our dam emergency action plans, or our EAPs, and prepare a response to the grand jury report and report back to the board.
Do you agree with the DSOD's characterization of our 3 dams as being similar to Oroville after doing this work?
That's a good question. Thank you. I don't know that I have enough information as to why DSOD determined those 3 dams in particular. Do I think it's a good idea to do some sort of additional investigation? I don't think it would hurt at all.
I would say the one that differs slightly is the Sulahule with that big bowl at the bottom of the spillway. It's definitely a slightly different design than Oroville. However, all 3 of those spillways that are being assessed are embedded in the earth, similar to the spillway at Orville. So we can't see underneath them without invasive condition assessments such as borings. And the other spillways, other than Bontempe, you can see underneath. Lagunitas, it's a raised wooden chute. You can see the spillway underneath. Same with Phoenix, although it's concrete, you can see underneath it. So you can tell if it's leaking or if there's a crack.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, did the grand jury reach out to the staff to get our assessment of how we're doing? It seems like they had quite a few judgments, but I'm wondering how deeply they talked with us.
I believe unless there was discussion outside of that I'm aware of, we just got a draft report and I think that was similar to North Marin. And we did provide some comments on the draft, some of which were accepted in the final report.
Any idea what motivated him to do it?
No, it's a bit confounding. And what's also specifically not clear is kind of their premise and where they arrived at the premise of the linkage between climate change and more atmospheric rivers and dam safety. But we're going to be looking into that a bit more.
Along those lines, I mean, first of all, it's great to see that we have been already being responsive to the issues I think that were raised by Orville. It was among a number of things, a big wake up call about our infrastructure in California, much like the drought. Like we're really facing issues that we haven't seen before, and the potential for failure there and how catastrophic it would have been. It's worthy that it's something we're paying attention to. I'm glad that we are, not surprisingly, doing what it takes to make sure that our facilities are safe. I think this is really an important update. I think it would be great to have these at our regular board meetings, just because I think more of the public attends these, and when we do have a response to the grand jury report and the phase 2 results, again, those would just be great things to have at our regular board meeting, though they overlap obviously with ops. On the grand jury report, I think my reading of it, the part of the premise is that there's, and as we have seen with climate change modeling data, is that we'll see larger extreme events. And I think the assumption is that's a new modeling that affects not just us, but all of California. It's a change in the baseline, and that the idea is, will our facilities hold up to the future, not to the way they were designed? And I can't help but thinking that they're looking at, in an extreme event, when our reservoirs fill, they begin to use the spillways. And then are the spillways of adequate size to handle the new hydrology? And I don't know whether that's something we've been looking into. I feel like that's actually the fundamental question, or at least one of them that I saw in the report. And I think it would be something for us to understand better when we have a response. And maybe that might be a place to come back to with future analyses, to look at, with future hydrology, are our spillways of a large enough size to accommodate what we would predict as a very significant, storm event? Because it seems that's where the concern was, is that our spillways would somehow or another be overtaxed in some way.
Yeah, that's kind of our initial read too, even though it didn't seem it was explicit in the grand jury report that was a concern. It seemed more kind of a broad brush of atmospheric rivers, maybe erosion or other things. But yes, we are going to confirm the capacity of the spillway under, completely saturated conditions and full and massive atmospheric river. I suspect, spillways you over design, and I'd be floored if there is a capacity issue, but that would be important. And we'll also, in doing that, be talking to dam experts on, do they see any other potential linkage to big atmospheric rivers or other climate change associated conditions and dam safety?
Regarding that expert, have you seen DWR's report on Orville?
No.
It's worth taking a look at. They assembled like 10 worldwide people One of them was with Montgomery, with Stantec. A person I didn't recognize, he's a Watson guy. He might be a candidate for that, but surely you could get one of those 10 to assess, because this is exactly the question they asked at Oroville. Is it going to work long term? You know, what needs to be changed? And they brought in these 10 guys to make that decision. Hopefully we can get by with just one.
Matt, thanks a lot for the presentation and welcome to the district. I think one thing to keep an eye on is this distinction between the safety of our dams and risk levels. I thought the grand jury report did a good job of differentiating between the metrics used for safety versus risk. On safety metrics, as noted, we do quite well. On risk, maybe not as well, but that's more of a function of these dams being in areas of high development. So if there is a failure, which according to the safety metrics is very unlikely, there will be significant consequences. And that's what the risk is trying to capture. I think the grand jury report did a decent job of differentiating between those two, but less so the media reports of the grand jury report. So I would suggest that in our communications, we try to emphasize that there's a real distinction between safety and risk. And risk is not something that we have control of. It's really the way that development patterns exist around our dams. So that was something that caught my attention. Matt, I'm curious, are the phase 2 assessments that AECOM will do, do you think those are going to be necessary to provide a complete response to the grand jury report?
If I could, yeah. So the phase 2 assessments are not tied to the grand jury report. It's something that's been in the works for years, right? And so, you know, the results of that assessment will help us, you know, be confident that the spillways are in good shape, but it's not specific to the grand jury response.
I mean, we'll certainly speak to the work we do in phase 1 and the upcoming phase 2, but the timing, even to respond to the grand jury, probably will be well in advance of completion of the work.
But it may be good just then, as you said, Ben, to note in the response to the grand jury that this study is ongoing, right?
Mhm. Just one other comment. We are also participating in the Water Affiliates Group, which is through the UC San Diego and Scripps Oceanography Institute that has created modeling for atmospheric river events. And as a member of that Water Affiliates Group, we will be looking into the forecasting of events. So that'll help us predict operations of the reservoirs as well.
At some point, Chris, it'll be great to get an update on that. I think this modeling activity, we've already seen the positive impacts on reservoir management, but how these modeling efforts are progressing and how the models are improving, it would be great to hear about that and ways in which we can leverage those advances for our operations as well.
Matt, thank you very much for the report, and I agree with Monty. I think the overarching message here is that we need to make sure we're future-proofing everything we do as we see changes to what's going on. Just a quick question. During these past atmospheric rivers over the winter, was there any concern of any of our infrastructure now, or do we see any results from a negative impact from any of those incidents, or do they work as designed?
Yeah, they did work as designed. We had normal maintenance of debris removal for logs and trash racks, but otherwise, yeah, the spillways did operate as designed.
Yeah, it's important to understand that DSOD is a very powerful agency and they're very safety oriented. I mean, that's their job, is to make sure these don't happen. They really fired up after San Francisco failed in LADWP, and they're very sensitive to this, and it's why we respond so much, because they crack the whip and we jump. You can't really get counter to DSOD. It's not safe, not from a political standpoint. So they know their job. Okay, public comment?
There are none.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great job. Item 3, fire flow. I guess you
That's-
aren't moving, huh?
That's me again.
See what happens? You get registered, now you're an expert.
I tell you.
All you got to do now is move 90 miles away so that you can be a real expert.
3. All right. Still Matthew Steiner, Associate Engineer in Planning. I'm here to talk to you about and present projects completed under the Fire Flow Improvement Program for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. The Fire Flow Improvement Program is a 19-year program that is funded through parcel taxes. The intent of the program is to replace fire flow deficient pipes in our distribution system and improve seismic resilience in critical infrastructure. On average, the district receives $4.5 million annually. Currently, we are in year 12 of the program. In fiscal year 2022, the district completed 2 FFIP or fire flow improvement projects, Monterey Ave and Ridge Road pipeline replacement projects identified on the slide at the top and bottom of the map. Between these 2 projects, 11,650 feet of pipe was replaced. The age of pipe replaced ranged from 69 to 107 years old. The investment for fiscal year 2022 was $4.2 million. In fiscal year 2023, the district initiated the Tree Haven PRP, identified on the slide in the middle of the map, well, middle top. This project is still in construction. Before the end, or by the end of the fiscal year, 7,235 feet of pipe had been replaced. The age of pipe replaced ranged from 56 to 96 years old. The investment for fiscal year 2023 was $2.5 million. Since initiation of the Fire Flow Master Plan, in total, 97.1 miles of pipe, of fire flow deficient pipe has been replaced with a total investment of $123.4 million. So now we're going to take a brief look at each of these projects. Monterey Avenue PRP replaced 6,664 feet of pipe ranging in age of 74 to 107 years old in San Anselmo at locations identified in purple on the map. The picture on the slide shows the new pipe covered in a white wrapping crossing a bridge and the metal guard installed to protect it. Ridge Road PRP replaced 4,966 feet of 69-year-old pipe with a mixture of welded steel and high-density polyethylene, or HDPE pipe, in Tiburon at locations identified on the map. The picture on this slide shows the pipeline in blue prior to replacement. Tree Haven PRP in San Rafael is still in construction. By the end of the fiscal year, 7,235 feet of pipe was replaced with a combination of welded steel and PVC. The picture on the left is a snapshot of the trenching process, the replacement process. We have several upcoming FFIP projects currently in design and planning stages, which are identified on the map. They include Alto Downline, Redwood Drive, Rock Ridge, Glenwood, and Wolfback Ridge. And that is a much shorter presentation.
What do you see happening in the long run with fire flow?
Long run? Well, we've still got what's 7 or 8 more years within the program itself. Are you asking about after that, or?
Yeah, I mean, presumably, I thought your description was not quite what I recall being the fire flow, but it had more to do with pitch points, because I don't think we were hopefully not depending on fire captains to determine what seismic risk is in our piping system. But the pinch points, I mean, we must be closing in on eliminating the bulk of them. I also found it interesting that you appear to be replacing PVC pipe, the blue one. Now, if that's the way it was buried, obviously there's a problem with the way it was installed. But that's kind of interesting to me that, you know, is it just too small?
Yeah, the pipelines were identified because of the sizing. Yeah,
Yeah.
too small for fire flow needs.
Yeah,
And in terms of
that was kind of an error when we put it in because the fire flow need would have been the same, presumably.
right. I'll have to get back to you on the material of the blue pipe that you saw. It may have been wrapped steel. So,
Oh, okay,
but
that
that
would make
might
more
not have
sense.
been PVC, but I'd have to get back to you on that. But in terms of 7 to 8 years from now, I can project that we will not have completed all of the pipelines projects that were identified in the original master plan due to increased costs of construction. There's no inflationary, factor into the parcel tax. It remains at $75 a year. So when we hit 7 to 8 years, we'll have to take a look at what's left in the master plan and whether or not the board wants to extend that program.
Yeah, be aware that I went into extensive effort to try to get the number raised at the time because of inflation and this issue of where we're going. And the pushback from the fire department was too much. They just didn't want to take the heat for increasing the tax. So I think we should think about that as a strategy going forward of what number is the right number and what is the plan for this thing. Is it just a permanent cost? It could be, but the format of with the fire captains and us, and it's kind of an interesting one. It makes it easy to pass because the fire guys come forward when this is on the election and it happens, which is good. But I think that the concept needs to be thought through a little better, the $75, because it seems like it's pretty light to me.
Along the same lines of the actual identified fire flow piece, is the fire flow now being identified as higher due to increased residential size through not new construction, but remodel, sprinkler additions and things like that? And is that calculated into the cost of the piping as well?
You want to go ahead?
Sure. The projects that were identified are from 2012 or so, when the fire chiefs got together and identified specific locations. And that information the district took, and we actually initiated a hydraulic model build, and with the purpose of verifying those specific locations. So the projects that generated the list of projects for pipeline replacement, and that list hasn't changed necessarily. So, and that's from 2012. So whatever metrics they were using then would still be consistent with.
It's driven by the fire hydrants, not by the sprinklers in houses. The fire hydrants are the key to it, and the spacing, the ISO spacing of the 300 feet. It seems to me the one thing we should be doing routinely is, and I don't know how to do this, and I never heard of anyone doing it, but I think it makes sense, is to notify ISO that these improvements have been made. And, tell them, because ISO is the group that determines the cost of fire insurance per house, whether you're going to get it, how much it's going to cost. It's all determined by this trade association of the insurance companies. And
then the responsibility of the fire department to report as part of their ISO rating, the fire flow in the area. So the benefit continues through that. I'm curious if there's impacts from the development that's going in that we could look to leverage some of these funds on based on the increased need for fire flow, because it is the spacing of the hydrants, but it's also a pressure issue and then water demand at the incident. So it'd be interesting to look at.
Yeah, I should mention that when we do new service applications or pipeline extension agreements, we do look at the existing capacity of flow for the mains that are in the street. And if needed, especially for pipeline extension agreements, we will require the developer to pay to upsize the pipelines that are going to the development.
it's about the only time we ever deal with a fire marshal. I don't know where the guy even lives, but he pops out of the blue when you have a problem with, like you want to put a new backflow device in or something, then you got to deal with the fire marshal.
Yeah, I was just going to share that when I came here and saw this program, it was really interesting and seemed very creative. And because what I wanted to share broadly in the industry, there's different takes on the uses of a water system, and many particularly special district type agencies look at their system to serve their customers. And the use for fire protection is a benefit, but not a driver in terms of sizing and these kinds of things. So there's often this kind of struggle between fire and the water agencies. And I thought this partnered collaborative approach was really novel and made sense. And the next issue, but it's not really next because it comes up pretty frequently, every few years when we talk to the fire chiefs is, will you guys just take on everything associated with hydrants? And we don't need to get into it now, but I think there's good reason for the experts in hydrants to be responsible to maintain them and never get into an Oakland Hills issue where, the hydrants aren't matching the trucks, the hoses, that kind of thing. But anyway, that's a dynamic that does come up because of course they would like us because we do maintain, right, the entire water system, but for hydrants.
And it's particularly important to Mill Valley because Mill Valley is our closest to Oakland, to that exact situation of the width of the roads and the difficulty of getting into service. Any other questions? Public comment?
Yes, we do have one, Mr. Larry Minikes. If you can just give me a second, Mr. Minikes, while I get you ready.
Carrie, can you hear me now?
Loud and
I
clear.
can hear you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I just want to point out on slide 3 that for 22 and 23, the average cost to replace 1 mile was in the $2 million range, roughly speaking. But from 98 through 2022, it averaged roughly 1.25 million. And I think it'd be really important going forward in the future to be able to project where you think your costs are going to be, because it appears from previous discussions and from what you're seeing here is that these costs are rising far more quickly than a lot of your other costs. And it's just going to be more of a burden going forward. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And of course, that's the issue with paving in part, that it all ties back to this. We end up being the paver for the cities, in addition to fixing our own problems. Okay, thank you. And next is funding for San Geronimo. We get the mats this morning, huh?
Good morning, Director.
Your mic. There you go. Done.
Yeah, it's on.
Morning, Directors. Matt Segas, the district's grant and legislative coordinator. In 2022, the district requested funding from Assemblymember Mark Levine to help support implementation of the San Geronimo Treatment Plant Emergency Generator Project. The project provides emergency power for the treatment plant to ensure the district's continued ability to produce and supply water to its customers, despite losing electrical service when PG&E shuts off the power during a PSPS event and during any other unforeseen power outages. With support from the Assembly member in September of 2022, Assembly Bill 179 designated $1 million in funding for this project. In order to accept the funding, which will be administered by the California Department of Water Resources, staff is requesting the Operations Committee review and refer to a regular bi-monthly meeting of the Board of Directors approval of a resolution authorizing the general manager to negotiate and sign a grant agreement with CDWR.
That's great. Thanks. It's interesting, this project, this was the biggest deficiency I identified when I joined the board, was the fact we had no standby generators of any size. And you referred to the PSPS stuff, but the owl was really the one that triggered it, the owl that committed suicide. And he shorted out the 2 PG&E sort feeds to that plant. One time he did this thing like this across the 2 lines, and he didn't make it, but he did take it all down, and we almost ran out of water because we couldn't get the water out of San Geronimo. So this is a really, really important project. Okay, public comment?
There is none.
Okay. Hey, nailing them.
It's a review and refer.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I need a motion. you.
Motion to review and refer this to the full board.
Second.
Okay. Water Resilience Roadmap.
We have Alicia Irish, our engineering manager
No,
for
no more
planning.
mats, huh?
No, presenting an update on two of our early action projects.
Good morning, directors. This morning I'll be presenting you an update on some of our early action projects. This morning I'll be presenting you an update on our Phoenix Bontempi connection project, as well as our Sulahulia electrification project. Starting with Phoenix Bontempi. We've presented this project at previous board meetings, and just to remind the board, this project will install infrastructure between Phoenix Lake and Bontempi Lake to improve our operational efficiency and allow for more frequent use of Phoenix Lake water without the intensive system modifications that exist today. This figure here shows 3 different alternative pipeline alignment routes that are currently being considered by our staff, each of which culminate in the existing Bontempi Headwork Tunnel, which is the current inlet to Bontempi Lake. Since we've discussed this project with the board, we've been working with a consultant to assist with preliminary engineering and a multi-benefit feasibility analysis. This includes collaboration with the County of Marin for a multi-benefit analysis to potentially add a flood control element to this project. The other assessments that are included in this study are water quality, hydrology, as well as a pump storage element. And while we do have a preliminary contract in place with this consultant, Kennedy Jenks, we will be coming back to the board at an upcoming meeting to amend this for a larger contract. We also concurrently have a geotechnical contract in place. And this consultant will provide an opinion on the potential impacts on the dam and reservoir for the proposed pumping scenarios, specifically looking at landslide risk and erosion concerns as it pertains to the drawdown rates that we are considering. So drawdown is the rate of change at which the lake level may drop, depending on the pump sizing that we may elect to install. So it's important that we consider these risks and try to minimize them as we move forward into the design phase of the project. We've also have an application submitted into PG&E for a new electrical service, as we need to bring power to wherever our pump station is ultimately located. And we've also performed a preliminary condition assessment of the existing Bontempi Headworks tunnel. And these pictures here show the drone operation that was used for this condition assessment that was completed just a few weeks ago. You can see the operator, a photo of the tunnel in the middle, as well as the fairly complex drone on the left side. We are also looking at various funding opportunities for this project, one of which is the USBR Small Storage Program. To be eligible for this funding opportunity, which is expected to come out this fall, we need to have a USBR compliant and approved feasibility study completed. And so we've executed an agreement with Kennedy Jenks to help us assist with this study. And we are planning to meet with a representative from the USBR to ensure that our feasibility study is meeting their standards. We're also talking with our local legislators to explore potential state appropriation funding as we move forward.
Can you go back to the drone photos just a second? Yeah, so it's quite interesting, this drone. It enabled us to get 3D renderings of the tunnel and used LiDAR. It's quite high-tech drone that you see here. And we did discover that some of the inlet pipeline that from Bontempi to the treatment plant is riveted steel, which, as you know, is quite old. So we are now considering whether or not that section of pipe should be replaced as part of the project, since we're going to be in there anyway. So that's just one of some of the information we got from the drone flyover.
That's interesting. You mentioned that. I remember one of the projects I worked on at Montgomery early on was at Sacramento, and the pipe was labeled RS. And I went, what is that?
Yeah.
In riveted steel.
Yeah. And now that we know the tunnel is in good shape, we're actually gearing up for confined space entry to put people in the tunnel to take a look. So
Seems to me that's a good thing to remove that riveted steel. I mean, it's probably strong enough. It might leak is the problem, but it seems like something that's pretty old.
And Crystal, this tunnel connects Bontempi to the treatment plant.
yes,
And where, so the.
go back to the map if you
The
could.
drone operators, where are they sitting?
So
At the
if
entrance.
I can hear, so the tunnel is approximately 1,200 feet here right at the inlet where we pull water from Bontempi Lake and it goes to the treatment plant, the Bontempi Water Treatment Plant. So there's access points on either side of the tunnel. So we actually had to fly in both directions because the drone with all the instrumentation only had like a 10-minute flight time on the battery. So we actually got about 75% of the way in on one side and then had to go to the other side to get the other 25% mapped out. But there are 2 access points.
It looks like pretty rough terrain to get this thing in there. It looks like you're going down a drainage gulch or something, huh?
Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 feet wide, most of the tunnel. It does narrow into a fairly small chamber once you get, I think, pretty much under the lake itself. But we are investigating, that wider area. And I think it would be a good opportunity if we deem the existing riveted pipe to be of, condition to be replaced. It would be a good opportunity to add that to this project. It may also allow for better positioning of the new pipe to be installed, as having an existing 24-inch pipe only leaves limited area to install the new pipe as well. So it would give us a chance to install proper base and rollers, to allow for better future maintenance for the existing and new pipe.
Sure. But I was really talking about the open terrain stuff.
Oh, of the map itself.
that
Yeah.
looks like a
So
pretty challenging project.
it is. Yeah. So there's a couple of different routes that go up. So the orange route goes up the hillside leading to Bontempi Treatment Plant, and then it goes along Filter Plant Road. The green line goes along Fish Grade, which is an existing fire road. And then the blue line, the upper line there, it has that big kind of turn at the upper portion of the figure. And that's where an old Phoenix gatehouse was. So there used to be a piece of infrastructure there. There's actually an existing PG&E power pole, but the lines have been de-energized, which is why we are still working with PG&E to get a new service. So it will be challenging terrain, but it's not anything that we haven't done before.
And if it's on the fire road, I mean, it's a little easier.
Yeah. So I do think that all of the alignments, while they haven't yet been finalized, are doable. So our engineering staff is still
I would
evaluating.
hope so. I didn't think you propose something that's not
Yeah.
doable. Thanks.
So moving on to Sulahuli.
Maybe, Alicia, so we will be seeing, I guess, the specifications for the contract with Kennedy and Jenks.
Yes. Yeah. So we just, we executed a minor contract just to sort of get the conversations going, to kind of reach out preliminarily to the County of Marin to facilitate some collaborative discussions. But prior to getting into any real in-depth, pump storage or hydrology, we will be coming back to the board, in the coming months.
Right.
To really discuss the scope of the larger contract.
Great.
And we anticipate it to culminate in a basis of design report.
So Alicia, when you do present the detailed scope of work, it might be helpful. As you well know, I'm really interested in pumped storage. And I think it'd be helpful if you could provide just a primer on that or background as to why, it's not, I think there may be an impression that this is a form of power generation. It's not so much, right? It's actually replacing batteries for storing solar power. It's an alternative to a battery, and it allows us to potentially support clean energy development here in Marin by converting our reservoir into just a battery, a storage system. So, but that conceptually, that's probably not apparent to everyone. And I know there's probably a lot of skepticism regarding the possibilities, but just to explain that concept when we're discussing the scope of work, I think would be helpful.
Sure, we can provide some background to pump storage and what it means and entails. And I think as part of that scope of work, I would encourage the consultant to do, a comprehensive look at, where the best sort of sites might be for pump storage. This project is just the Phoenix Bontempi, which Phoenix is, one of our smaller lakes. So maybe there might be a more appropriate place to embark on, a pump storage endeavor for the district.
Thanks.
So Suluhuli electrification, this project has also been preliminary presented to the board. And this project would bring consistent power to Suluhuli pump station and allow us to improve our operability and flexibility of this storage facility, also allowing us an improved efficiency for a longer-term operating model. There are a number of technical alternative analyses underway, all of which are being conducted in collaboration with PG&E. We are working with not only their service planning side, but also their sustainable solution turnkey, or SST team, to look at some more sustainable alternatives such as generator, fuel cell, or even floating solar options, all of which I'll be discussing in subsequent slides. So we've met a few times with the sustainable solution team. We've also conducted a site visit with them out at the reservoir. And we met with them 2 different times in May to discuss the 4 different alternatives that they've come up with. One of which is to rent a 1 megawatt generator to allow for a operation of one of our 800 horsepower pumps. The other is to install a permanent generator as a permanent power source at that facility. The third alternative is to install up to 2 megawatts of floating solar at the reservoir. And the fourth option is the installation of batteries or fuel cells at the site. So the sustainable solution team, they evaluated all 4 of these scenarios against the current case, which was renting 2 generators at a cost of $1.3 million in 2021. The rental of the 1 megawatt generator or the installation of the 1 megawatt permanent generator, they both result in continuing diesel and carb considerations, while they were projected to be at least on an initial level a little bit cheaper than the rental of the 2 generators. The installation of the solar, while it is more environmentally friendly, has an operating consideration in that there's limited hours of operation. We would only be able to operate our pumps during the time at which the solar is being generated, so during the sunny daylight hours, which may not coincide with our optimal operating model, and we would not be able to, for example, operate our pumps at night if we so chose. And then the fourth alternative is the battery and fuel cell option, which was excluded at a very high level just due to the expense required, the footprint, as well as the needed fuel and power generation source. So this led the sustainable solution team to really encourage us to talk with the service planning side to explore the feasibility of getting electrical power out there. So that led us to further discussions with the service planning team. Our most recent discussion was in late June. at which they informed us they have been running 2 different technical alternatives. One of which is to allow us to run one of our 2 800 horsepower pumps at a 100% load at any time. And the second study was looking at allowing us to run both of our pumps at 100% load, but only at night. The first study is looking quite favorable, at least from a preliminary result perspective, and that it would only require PG&E to upgrade some of their regulators and fuses. So it's looking like a very feasible path at this time. Whereas the second study requires major reconductoring of the system. And it would require major PG&E upgrades on their side of, the meter. Both of these studies assume the installation of variable frequency drives or VFDs at our pumps. So we're in the process of obtaining an electrical engineer to evaluate whether the variable frequency drives are compatible with our existing pumps and motors. So there, in any case, there will need to be a major project on the district side of the meter to make sure that our pumps are compatible with the PG&E power.
What's the voltage on the motors?
I believe they're 480.
Just to put things in perspective, a megawatt seems a light to me for 800 horse, give or take. I mean, you need a little more than that because it's 746, right? So, you need a little more oomph than that to run an 800, at least at full.
Mhm.
Have you looked at motor drives, right angle drives?
I think that's going to be part of our electrical effort, is to really, look, give a comprehensive effort and evaluation to what we have out there. The variable frequency drives are required just due to the area, as you know, is quite remote. And so starting that much load and having that much power in such a remote area might cause, flicker to the other customers in the area. So it's important that we have some type of soft start or VFD.
Sure.
to not have that situation be created. So we do have a meeting scheduled with the service planning team at the end of July to receive formal results of the preliminary study, at which point the district will need to confirm commitment to move forward and allow the project to move into the PG&E design queue. This has a tentative electrification date of late 2025, early 2026, which would allow us at that point to operate the reservoir in a more frequent manner. We also have some larger water supply projects that we are currently evaluating. So if the conveyance or storage were to come online and Suluhuli were to become more of a hub, we would go back to PG&E at that time and have them look at their system at that later date to make sure that we could operate Suluhuli in the longer term model that we're looking to do.
Right. And we're doing this phase with that in mind.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll also add, when we say commitment, right now, what we got from PG&E is, a commitment to run the pumps. I believe it was once a month.
Yeah. So there is I think the term is like a power allowance. Like if they're going to upgrade their system, we need to provide commitment that we will be using the power that we say we're going to use. And so PG&E does this project on the assumption that we will use the power, and we have a limited time period to use it. I believe it's something like for 3 months within the first year, we have to hit the allowance. If we do not hit the allowance, we are financially responsible for that upgrade.
Right. And we have been having discussions with operations as to would they be able to meet that commitment. And what we preliminarily have seen is that it's a very low bar, the commitment. It would be in line with our just routine, running the pumps to make sure that they're operational when needed. So it's not a request to use them continuously for a certain amount of time. It's more like just turn it on for a minute and, make sure everything's good. So, and operations feels that they could meet that commitment, that it's within their, capacity.
Cool. Is there a value to West Marin of us doing this? I mean, it's pretty rural out there. If we put up the bucks to bring the power in, does that help West Marin? Or do you think they have enough power now and for what they need?
I mean, it really only takes it out to, the Northwest Marin area. So, much of the population in West Marin, while it's quite small, I think is farther south than that. So there's still several miles that would need work if they were to want to receive that upgrade in power. This is really just to, the Marshall area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Marshall's pretty well developed. I mean, on the coast, at least.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Alicia, is there any possibility if power is brought out to Suluhuli, leveraging that to produce solar power at the reservoir to sell back to PG&E or MCE?
That's a really interesting question. So in April of this year, PG&E actually moved forward with a new regulation called the NEM 3.0, which was somewhat of a disincentive in that previous to that regulation, I believe you were able to sell power back at the 1-to-1 ratio. But after that kicked in, which it was either the beginning or the end of April of this year, that went from a 1-to-1 ratio to really 25 cents on the dollar. So they're really encouraging users to install just the size of solar that they need to prevent, oversizing of the system. So while we could still explore that, I don't know the exact details for this particular case. I just know that was a pretty significant regulation.
The incentives are not lining up to favor that. It's really unfortunate. And that's a big discussion, I think, across the board when it comes to renewable energy sources.
Right.
Because on the other hand, the demand for clean energy we'll never be able to meet it at larger scales. I think down the road, maybe within 20 years, maybe it's going to be 50 years, a critical metric for all operations are going to be our carbon footprint. And there's going to be, eventually that's going to become the driver of a lot of what we do is reducing our carbon footprint. Starting to look at that well in advance, I think certainly won't hurt us. And the other thing is, I think a lot of our accounting is going to start to include the external costs of relying on power sources that generate carbon, and that's going to become part of the accounting. So it's actually going to make these types of projects a lot cheaper at some point. Solar energy generation and climate financing is going to be available for that soon. It may not be none of this is potentially applicable today with what we're trying to do at Suluhuli, but just maybe something to keep on that planning horizon.
Absolutely.
I would just follow that up by saying, this project I'm torn a little bit about because it's so nice to get away from the diesel generation, especially the trucks going out over and over again, and then the operational benefit as well. But I really feel like we'd be missing the boat if we can't get some sort of clean energy piece into this, or at least have it all ready to go. So once we get the electricity out there, we can add that at some point relatively soon, because it seems like this is a really good place to be able to do that. And we don't have a lot of really good places. So I'd like to take advantage of them where we can.
Yeah. I mean, one of the challenges of this particular site is that we don't own a lot of the neighboring property. So we are really constrained, for at least this particular site, to have the solar be on the reservoir itself. I do think, as we previously discussed for the pump storage, we have the opportunity. I mean, we move a lot of water. We have the opportunity to look at other sites to aid in our clean energy generation.
I presume there's no gas out there.
No, there is no gas. So some of our next steps for this project, like I mentioned, are to enter into a contract with an electrical engineer for technical support. We are also going out for an RFP for the discharge pipe design to help us minimize the water loss and the conveyance of water from Suluhuli to Nicasio. As currently, once it's pumped from Sulahuli, it travels over land for about 2 miles in a dry bed. So to get a dedicated pipeline out there. We also will be meeting with PG&E in the coming weeks to understand the various options that we have and the results of the current study that's underway. There is a tentative project completion date for late 2025, early 2026, but this does largely hinge on PG&E as the critical path. We are also looking at various funding opportunities, talking with local legislators about this project for potential state appropriations, as well as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for potential WRDA funding.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.
Board comment? Public comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm hopeful that as we look at the Army Corps of Engineers money, we'll articulate this as kind of the beginning phase of a longer term project. That money's been kind of, we've been told it's going to be guided our way. But I think this really is just the beginning of a regional approach to increasing our water supply, increasing our storage. And as we get our first hooks in here with them, I think that we can build a stronger, longer term relationship that'll be really important in the coming years.
I would echo what Jed just said, and I would just say further, I really do think that these updates are extremely important to the public, and I know that we can. There's different venues and where we can talk about these and provide updates. I really do think our general board meetings at night are better attended by the public. It's easier for people to attend in the evening. I know we were talking about having regular updates on our water supply resiliency work, and that this is a component of that. And so maybe a shorter presentation of this can just be made available when we have our next regular board meeting and we talk about this.
Yeah, so that's exactly the plan. So our kind of planning efforts for updating the board and the public on our water supply roadmap is every operations meeting, to the extent we have information, but the goal is we do. We'll give kind of a deep technical dive on some component or project like we did today. And the first meeting of the month in August, it just happens to be the second, will give a broad overview of the project, including summaries of where we are on these projects.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the key, because the purpose of the the operations committee is to provide the in-depth, and this avoids the board meetings going for 4 hours. So it's kind of a trade-off, and keep in mind that the video is available. So if they're that driven, they can go look at the video of the meeting. Any public comment?
Yes, there are several. First, Miss Sandy Goldman, Carol D., and then Larry Minikes.
Greetings, board. I'm here on behalf of Ross Creek, which is totally dependent on Phoenix Lake. The flow, the water quality, and the water temperature. Now, in the middle of the winter, when there's lots of water is gushing over the spillway, it's cool, it's well aerated. But as Phoenix Lake warms up, it stratifies very early in the year. The water flowing over the spillway before it drops below that level is hot. You basically have poached fish, well aerated water, but very warm. The warm water off the top of the lake gets further heated over the spillway in the sun. When the water level drops below the spillway level, then the flow in Ross Creek is dominated in the upper part and by leakage from the low level release valve and a bit of groundwater. It is loaded with manganese and iron, way more than fish can tolerate. It's cool, but it has very, very low DO. It's just awful. This is a salmonid stream. There are spawning steelhead periodically and resident rainbow trout. The flood control district will be addressing the fish passage issues in the concrete channel in 2025, and we expect a lot more spawners coming up here. I really would like Marin Water to step up to the plate and acknowledge the impacts that you have on the steelhead trout in Ross Creek. And if you're going to be doing an interbasin transfer of water, surely the State Water Resources Control Board needs to weigh in on that. I mean, Bontempi is in a different watershed than Phoenix Lake. So have you addressed that? Just question. Anyhow, please think of the important resource that the steelhead in Ross Creek are.
Thanks, Sandy.
Carol D, please.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. I don't usually attend these meetings, but I saw that Sule Hule was on the agenda, so here I am. I'm one of a group of owners of neighboring property. And so I appreciate the detail of the report. And I would also, it would be really nice to see these at the General Board of Directors meetings as well. I have two questions. One is, there was reference made to a longer term model for the electrification of Sule Hule Reservoir. And I just wondered what that referred to, you know, describe what is that longer term model. And secondly, I wonder if if you're looking at fire safety, if you're electrifying the pumps out there, as you said, it is a very remote area and it's very dry in the summer. So that was my other question. So basically, what's meant by longer term model, and are you looking at fire safety out there? Thanks so much for all your work.
Thank you. Mr. Larry Menekes.
Yes, good morning. And I think a fundamental question in regard to solar is, if you do install solar out there, and obviously can only be run during the day, under what circumstances would you need to run Sule Hule pumps 24/7? Or could you get away with just running it during the day? And that's really the question. How important is it to be able to run these at night, considering that Sule Hule is a backup rather than a primary source of our reservoir water? Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further comments.
Okay. Thank you. On-call maintenance and repair contract.
Let me introduce Mark Casray, who's our engineering manager for construction.
Thank you, Crystal. Oh, I need to.
There you go.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Mark Casray, engineer manager for construction, here to present a recommendation for review and refer to the full board for award of a proposed on-call capital construction contract, contract 2009. So recently, staff identified an opportunity to improve some efficiencies between operations division and engineering division. In a nutshell, operations, of course, maintains our infrastructure, and the engineering department is responsible for replacing our capital infrastructure. And as needed over the course of normal operations business, smaller projects are identified from time to time that may need engineering support. And so when that occurs, these projects are unplanned and brought to engineering for a development of a small construction contract. So we're proposing an on-call contract that will help bridge the gap between our engineering and operations divisions. This on-call contract is very common in the industry with various cities in California, utilities, and Caltrans. And it's designed to identify some of these smaller unplanned projects and improve efficiencies between these departments. Since these types of projects that are identified by operations range in cost between $50,000 to $100,000, we see some losses in productivity when we go to develop a construction contract, advertise and deliver, and then ultimately execute. The cost and the time to deliver a $50,000 project is often quite similar to one for a $3 or $5 million contract. And so a couple of basic benefits are that, of course, it reduces a burden on our operations staff when they need to expend significant resources on projects that might be larger or more complicated or infeasible for them. But then it also allows our engineering staff to direct an on-call or a standby contractor to perform work without impacting our commitment to deliver our planned long-term projects. And so what does this contract look like? Basically, it's what's known as a force account contract or a time and materials contract. Essentially, work would be identified on demand as needed by both the engineering and the operations departments. Once a scope is identified, a contractor would then be directed to perform that work, and all of their equipment, their materials, and their labor would be tracked by our construction management team and our inspector. And then the contractor is paid their direct rate or their cost of performing that work, plus a reasonable and fair markup as identified by the Department of Industrial Relations prevailing wage rates and Caltrans published equipment rental rates. So this is a.
I'm a little confused. Are you
Sure.
talking about a contractor or a consultant?
This is an on-call contract for construction services. So
Build it.
This would be Public Works. Yes. And so this is a competitive contract. So the mechanism by which the contractors would compete is the labor markup. So the image on the right is our daily extra work report, and it's essentially the form that we use to track force account labor on our construction projects. And so the contractors that will be bidding on this project would be bidding based on their labor markup.
Their profit.
Yes, profit and overhead, things of that nature. So quick touch on the schedule. We did advertise the project on July 18th. We intend to open bids on August 1st. And if the board does support a project such as this, then we would plan to come to the board on August 15th for a recommendation to award. The contract is a 2-year contract with an option to extend the contract for up to 2 more years at 1-year increments.
And do you think they're going to bite?
We have seen quite a bit of interest in this contract.
Small contractors or
Small and large altogether, yes. So we're excited to see what kind of efficiencies and opportunities this contract might provide.
And does it extend to design build, or we design it and they build it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's kind of a quasi design build, but we are the designers. And what we've seen in engineering is that the technical design, which would be performed under these types of projects, it only takes a matter of a few days to a week. It's really that loss in advertising and executing a contract with a contractor. And again, these are projects that are common to what we do on day in and day out. And we're trying to address this specific project that's unplanned, that comes to engineering. So we're trying to accommodate the needs of our operations divisions who can't take on certain projects because of might need an engineering solution, for example, but then also allows our staff to be focused on our long-term capital program.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting and innovative to move in this direction. And just as one of a number of things that Crystal and her staff are looking at of how do we staff up from a resource standpoint with the increase in capital program in ways that aren't necessarily we need more people, how we do things. So I really applaud both of them bringing this.
Okay, thank you. And so when we're looking at the fiscal impact on this proposed contract, we identified a not to exceed amount of $1 million. As I mentioned earlier, this is quite ubiquitous, both in our industry and also in California. And what we've seen is there's certainly a larger amount that we could do, but we wanted to choose kind of a modest amount since we recognize this contract is new to the district. We want to see how this would fit in with our group. But additionally, we wanted to capture some of the projects that we've seen come to engineering in an unplanned fashion over the last few years. And so we had estimate a total impact for the 2-year period of about $1.5 million when you include materials and district labor and things of that nature. Okay. So moving on to basically a couple of examples of some suitable projects. Ralston Ave is a 120 some odd year pipeline in Mill Valley. It's a pipeline that's seen better days and has got a well-known leak history, and it's been maintained by operations staff for decades, and they've reported to leaks quite frequently, making numerous repairs. And so this is the type of project that might be suitable for our on-call contract. It might not be suitable to add to a larger capital project, and one might not be in the area, for example, and it doesn't really serve a productive purpose to be a standalone contract.
And it's not identified in Fireflow?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Do you
Joe.
think that's because there's not enough people there? Not enough houses? I mean, 2-inch line, pretty small.
Right. Yeah, the fire flow master plan, as we learned, was developed based on hydrant flows. So perhaps there's not a hydrant connected to this 2-inch line.
Perhaps there should
Yeah.
be.
Certainly. So a couple of photos of that same galvanized 2-inch pipeline. So the photo on the upper right is actually a failed repair clamp. There should be a threaded rod that's providing a compression fit of that repair over a leak. So those are load bearing cobwebs you see there. In the lower left, we've got 7 leak repair clamps over just a 5-foot section. And really what we're trying to demonstrate here is just each one of these clamps represents a field crew going out, mobilizing to the site and making repairs, interacting and responding to customer concerns, everything. And so this is the type of project we would target for the on-call.
But the nice thing is now it's all stainless steel.
That's an excellent point. Actually, and I would be remiss to not point out that our operations staff recently have been replacing large sections of this pipe with new 2-inch copper. So they're making some
Right.
great progress as well.
Right. But those, when he says sections, we're talking 30, 40 feet. The entire length is 385 feet, which would be a much larger project and take up a lot of their time. So, yeah.
Well, 40 feet at a time, you'll get there.
All right. So one more quick example is a culvert repair in San Rafael. This is off Bayview Street. And we responded to a leak on a water service, and our crews needed to access that water leak to make a repair. The utilities in that neighborhood are actually going through the culvert. And in order to access, of course, they jackhammered the roof of the culvert, which required an engineering design. It was not something that could be readily repaired in the field. So the project came to engineering, and we developed a design. We took calculations on rebar development. We established a plan for false work, steel false work, and then of course the concrete, and advertised the project. And that took just over 2 months. The technical took only a day or two. And the formal bid came in just under $40,000. And so this is another project that we think would be suitable for this proposed on-call. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, just, sorry, Monty, just to clarify the difference between on-call versus standalone projects, is it the size that some of these wouldn't qualify?
No, not necessarily. It's just essentially this on-call is kind of a retainer contract. So we will have a contractor on retainer available to perform work upon a certain notification period. We're noting 15 days of notification, and then they mobilize. And so it allows us to be flexible and nimble in addressing these unplanned needs with a competent, capable contractor in a very efficient manner.
So if I could, the example of the culvert box, a $45,000 project, instead of having to put together a bid package, get it on the street, review bids and award, you just go right to the on-call contractor, give them the design and get the work moving.
And if I can add, it's a way to comply with the Public Contracts Code requirement that we go out for a competitive bid contract. It does allow us to go out for a competitive bid contract. This is going to competitive process, but it will also allow us to mobilize flexibly under that competitive. Once it's competitively bid, we have, we can draw upon that as we need.
Just one more question is, in these types of retainer arrangements, there's always a risk that the group that's going to do the work is just not available because they're trying to balance multiple requests. And sometimes a request comes in and I'm guessing that's hard to plan against. We do our best to hope, to identify groups that we believe have available capacities even during busy periods. But I'm just how do you think about that? There's something, an emergency, and they're just not available.
And we certainly did think about that. That's a great question. It is one of the challenges with a contract of this nature. A number of ways that we identified to try to mitigate that as best we can, because it is a real challenge. One is that we clearly identify the type of scope that we target on a contract like this. So our underground pipeline replacements to a given extent, so a few hundred feet, maybe 1,000 feet, not what we see on our pipeline replacements, retaining walls and things of that nature to require that we receive capable contractors. We also we required a Duns and Bradstreet rating of 2A2, which requires a fiscal capability of between $2 and $12 million.
And I think very importantly, you mentioned emergency. These are not necessarily emergency projects. Emergency projects, we have the ability to call up a contractor, find someone that's available to get out there today. These are the unplanned, small one-off projects designed so we don't have to go out through a whole bid process. Sometimes you spend more money in the bid process than the value of the project. But emergency projects, we have another means to get those done quickly, GM authority, and then we come back to the board.
Also, I just want to be clear, right? It's not a retainer contract. So the contractor doesn't get a guaranteed payment unless they do work, which a retainer they would have a payment regardless of work. So
yes, that's true. There's no obligation whatsoever to perform work under this contract if no work is identified, and no obligation to make payment to the contractor unless work is performed.
Are there LDs if he doesn't show up?
No, I don't think we have LDs identified. No.
I'll just add on. I think that contractors out there actually like these types of contracts because it allows them to sort of do the infill work when they have, they have a break between larger projects and they have, some extra crew. They have sort of smaller places to put them flexibly. And also they don't have to prepare a bid package for a very small project each time there's going for a project, which is a lot of work for the contractors to pull together.
I just want to focus on the cost effectiveness of this. And since these are not emergency repairs, and in some ways, like these small projects, you're describing them as things that are unplanned, but it's sort of like you can sort of plan for the unplanned as well. And so I want to make sure that what we're talking about here is a cost-effective way of dealing with small projects versus would it be more cost-effective to have increased staffing to be able to do these projects? So, that ultimately we want to get work done, and we know that sometimes that things fit in when there's suddenly some time or there is a need, but it's not an emergency. How to plan for that appropriately. So I don't know if you can speak to sort of that. This is
I could. I mean, it's a good question.
In staff.
It's a good question, and we have had communication with operations on this. And I do think the culvert box was a good example that projects that require an engineering work, and typically our folks, right, on that project, we went out to bid. So that's really it, not having to go out to bid for the $40,000 project or something where we need, it's time sensitive, the streets opened up, and if we can get this contractor out instead of one more patch, we can get that pipe replaced. in a way that we really couldn't in a bid process because we aren't going to leave the hole open for 3 months. But yeah, this is not intended to replace the bread and butter and the great work done by staff.
So we're looking for a review and refer.
Yeah, we need a public comment first.
There are no speakers for public
Okay.
comment.
Great. Okay, we need a motion.
I'll make the motion for review and referral.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 7, approval of pipeline replacement projects and filing of notice of exemption pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act.
Okay, I'm gonna take this one. Normally, we bring notice of exemptions to the board at the time of award of contract. We combine them together. But in the case of these 2 projects, we are being required to file the notice of exemption as part of the grant award requirement. So, so today we have 2 pipeline projects that are up for grant award. And the first one, so this request is to approve the project and also the filing of the notice of exemption. So let me just tell you a little bit about the 2 projects. The first one is the Canal District project, which you've heard about, that we will be installing approximately 2,780 linear feet of 6-inch pipe and replacing 80 service laterals on old leak-prone pipe in the district's canal, in the canal area. And we will be replacing asbestos cement pipe from the 1950s to the 60s in that project. The other project is the Coal Drive project, also Marin City project, which is a bit larger. And we'll be installing 15,475 linear feet of 8-inch and 6-inch pipe to, again, replace old leak-prone pipe. And that pipe is primarily cast iron pipe also from the 50s and 60s.
Okay, thanks. Any questions?
Oh, yeah. So I just these are, I think, really good projects. I just want to, I don't know if this has been run by the communities that in terms of this, of our approach to seek an exemption, because I think we can make an assumption that we don't see an impact of doing these projects, but I feel like that it's an important moment to stop and ask the communities whether they have a concern about us taking this approach.
Yeah, I would say that, this is the CEQA process. This is the process through which the community can speak to that if they have any questions. These are, as my understanding is, these are projects that have been done in concert with interest of the community. So exemptions for these types of pipeline replacement projects, quite common. Actually, one would probably almost meet a statutory exemption under CEQA, which means you don't even pass go. We just identified them under a categorical exemption, which is also very common just because one is, I think, a little bit longer than the statutory exemption would allow for. But this is going to come to a full board meeting. There is an opportunity for the public to be present there and raise any issues or concerns that they might have at that time. And then we'd be asking the board to, at that time, approve the projects, which would trigger under CEQA guidelines, the filing of a notice of exemption.
And these projects were developed really in partnership with the Marin City community. And in fact, the grant was a joint grant, and the community is actually involved supporting the actual construction of the project as well, with door hangers and other activities. So this is really uniquely kind of a partnership project with the community.
Yeah, actually, a portion of the grant award will be going to the community centers for their public outreach. So they've been involved with us in terms of what that looks like.
Great.
Yeah.
I know that the public process, that there's more public process. I'm not speaking to that really. It's more an added, I don't want to say courtesy. It's just, I think, good measure for us to be in communication with them that this is the process we're moving down, and to make sure in advance that is something that they're aware of and supportive of, because finding out in the public process is why wait till then. So just curious if our ongoing partnership has included them knowing that we're taking this step.
Yeah, I don't believe, but I think it's a fair point, and it would be easy enough for us to share with Terry Green or the right person there, just a heads up, something like that.
Although it is just replacement in kind,
Mhm.
basically. So,
Right.
you know, we do these all the time.
I think that would be a good step to take, and I'm not sure also, again, with the canal community as well, just to check ahead. Thank you.
Okay.
Needless to say, Terry Green and the Marin City community is all over this. So we've been meeting with them a lot and we'll continue to. So thank you.
Probably they're more event aware than we are. Public comment?
There are none.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Professional service agreement with Vista View.
Okay, I'm going to take this one as well. We are at the end of our current contract agreement with Vista View, and staff seeks to start a new contract because we've
What do
had
they do?
Vista View was previously known as Quintel. They are a consultant for our ERP SAP system. So they work very closely with staff in customer service, the IT department, HR, whenever updates are needed on the back end of SAP. So they are definitely a vital resource, even with rate calculations and our billing systems. And they also help manage the meter when we get meter data. So, and the integrations between our meter reads and billing. So certainly a key technology provider for us. And so staff is requesting authorization or review and refer to the full board to authorize the general manager to execute a new contract with Vista View beginning for this coming fiscal year with a not to exceed of 200,000.
Okay, questions?
How much is the new amount for the contract gone up?
Well, the total amount is 200. We can always, if we don't use it, we don't really expect to use that much because we've been trying to solicit from all of our department heads, how much do you think you're going to use them over the coming year? And, you know, we hear back, you know, oh, 40 grand here and 50 grand there. And so 200 is certainly ample enough to cover it. And we could even extend the contract through an amendment if we so choose to do so. It's just really just to have that baseline. It doesn't mean we have to spend the money. Yeah.
I'm more just curious on how much costs are increasing, but
Oh, the cost, the hourly costs. We'll get that with the proposal back that comes to the board for approval. Yeah.
With this, the new SAP software hopefully or the new enterprise software at some point coming, is this something that we'd still continue to contract out for with that new software or once we get a replacement, or would this type of work be able to do in-house?
That's a good question. So it depends on the product that we select for ERP replacement. So, and we're probably going to need, you know, we're going to have implementation that'll be helped with whatever vendor we select, whether it's an SAP conversion to HANA, their new product, or some other solution. I could envision that, you know, we're going to need some support moving whatever new system we get for a year or two before staff could take it on.
Thank you.
Yeah, just keep in mind that the criticality of people like Vista View is that we were able to implement SAP and the county of Marin wasn't. So the county of Marin dropped, I don't know, $100 million or something, trying to get it to work and never got it to work. We even offered to help the county of Marin and they turned us down, which we found interesting. So these people are pretty critical to keeping these big programs running, especially something like this that's got its tentacles in every aspect of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the group we worked with on the intertie a bit, or have we worked with Vista before?
As Quintel.
Okay.
Yeah.
This really is a kind of IT sort of support.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good. Public.
There are no public comments.
Okay, need a motion?
so moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you all. And with that, we'll adjourn. Thanks for hanging in line.